Well, I am thrilled with joy to have the privilege to present Professor Thomas Verny, whom I met 30 years ago when I invited him to Montreal for our Perinatal symposium. He is a keystone and inspiration to all prenatal work. Thomas Verny is a psychiatrist, academic, award-winning author, poet, global speaker, blogger and on Psychology Today, and columnist for the Globe and Mail. He is the author of 8 of books, including The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, that you have to read if you haven't yet, published in 27 countries, as well as 45 scientific papers. He has previously taught at Harvard University, the University of Toronto, York University, St. Mary University in Minneapolis, and the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute. Over the years, Verny's short stories and poems have appeared in many literary journals. His collected poems were published as Cordless in 2014. In 2004, Mothering magazine, in recognition of Verny's contribution to the field of parenting and child rearing, named him one of their living treasures. And this is true. In 2005, the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute bestowed on Verny a doctorate of human letter.
So his lecture today will be on pre- and perinatal psychology, foundational constructs. Scientific research in the last few decades has shown beyond doubt that an unborn child from the 6th month of conception is, if not before, is a sensing, feeling, thinking, and remembering being. Therefore, everything that his or her mother experiences, feels, and thinks will have an impact on this child's body and mind. PPP, pre- and perinatal psychology, is a field of study that explores the lifelong impact of our earliest experiences beginning at conception and continuing into pregnancy, birth, and infancy. Thomas Verny.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very kind and generous introduction. Thank you so much. Can I share the screen, please?
So could we share the screen of Thomas Verny?
I am waiting for sharing the screen permission.
Okay, it should come.
It's on its way.
Hopefully.
Hopefully our technical team is coming.
There we go.
Good.
Okay. Share. Here we go. Okay. Well, I understand that you have quite a number of young parents or parents to be in the audience. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to, before I start sort of into the science, and I know I only have 20 minutes, so I will have to be brief, but I did want to start with a story that kind of got me off into the science of pre and perinatal psychology that I shall speak on in a few minutes. So this is one of the many stories that kind of got me interested into the science of pre and perinatal psychology, and I shall just read you the story. When my son Tom Eric was almost 3, I decided to question him about birth and possibly pre-birth. Our first dialogue occurred at bath time, when the house was quiet and my son was very relaxed, playing with some little bath toys while I washed him gently. I was not prepared for the feeling of awe which flooded me as his memories unfolded. As excited as I was, I remembered to use open-ended questions. This is a psychologist writing this. To use open-ended questions which asked for sensory information and would not lead the child's account. Todd spoke quietly and matter-of-factly, his eyes locked on mine. Mother, Todd, do you remember what it was like to be born? When you came out, I went down the tunnel. What did that feel like? Like exercise. What was it like when you left the tunnel? Light. Mother, it was light. Was it anything else? Todd, it was cold. So the next day, the mother once again gave him a bath and continued the conversation. Where were you before you were born at a hospital, Todd? In a pond. What was it like? It was warm. I slept on a baby thing. Well, obviously, he's talking about the placenta. Did you hear any sounds? Mudin. What sound? Mudin pun punt. So this is the umbilical circulation and probably the mother's heartbeat. Do you remember where you were before you were in the warm pond? Interrupting. Lightning. Lightning? Were you scared? She's very, very sensitive to say this. I was scared of the lightning. When you were in the pond, did you have fun? Could you play? I could move around. Did you like that? I liked that. Did you have dreams? Yup. What was it like when you were born? Light summertime. I heard many stories like this, and for those people in the audience, you need to remember that if you want your children to talk about their pre-birth experiences or their births, it's very important not to ask leading questions and to do it at a time when they are relaxed. Also, the best time to get information about pre-birth is sort of between 2.5 and 5. After that, it seems the children begin to forget, and perhaps they also pick up the fact that people are rather non-believing, and so they get kind of negative feedback. So coming back now to the science of pre and perinatal psychology, these are sort of the 8 foundational constructs that I have arrived at. They are not official APA policy. They are my own personal constructs. And the very first one, of course, is a definition of pre and perinatal psychology, which might be helpful. And pre and perinatal psychology elucidates all aspects of early human development, from conception through infancy, based on genetics, neurobiology, psychology, and sociology. In that sense, it is a theory and a practice that is unified, holistic, longitudinal, and contextual. I would like it to move, but it has a mind of its own. There we go. So I'm not going to speak about APA. This is a movie that takes about 30 seconds, and I would like to show that to you. I hope you have the sound going. Oops, sorry. There we go. Can you hear that? So could you hear the sound or not? NASA, could you hear the sound? No. Okay,
No.
so no. Okay, so what this movie shows is that at the beginning, what you hear, oops, what you hear is a very nice music and the baby is relaxing. Then suddenly the parents start arguing. And then some glass is broken and you can see how the baby is reacting to it. So life is a continuum from conception to death. A person's life does not begin at birth, but at conception. This is absolutely essential to understand. A lot of people, including scientists, believe that life begins at birth, which of course is totally unscientific and totally ridiculous, because we know that life begins right at conception. Second, there is no separation between the mind and the body. And we have known that for a long time. They are one. Whatever changes occur in the mind will affect the body and vice versa. What is new, what is novel to pre and perinatal psychology is the understanding that when a woman is pregnant, this principle may be extended to her child in utero. So they are really one, just like the body and the mind are one, the mother and the child are one. And I'm just going to skip that because we don't have enough time. How humans develop and learn depends on the dynamic interplay between nature, that is an individual genetic endowment, and nurture, that is nutrition, surroundings, care, stimulation, and teaching that are either provided or withheld. Nature's potential can be realized as it is enabled by nurture. This is by Alan Shore, who is one of the foremost psychoanalysts and investigators of bonding in the United States. Here, there was some time ago, a Time magazine. The cover says, "The God Gene." There is no such a thing, there is no such a thing as a God gene or a schizophrenia gene. Now we know that it takes many, many genes to create any kind of a personality or disease. And what is really exciting is the new science of epigenetics. And so we find that the brain is sensitive to experience throughout life, but experience during the critical periods of prenatal and early postnatal life organizes the brain. Experience is the chief architect of the brain. Bruce Perry said that. And the way experience is the chief architect of the brain is through epigenetics. And once again, we don't have time to talk about epigenetics, but the important thing to realize is that everything, as you have said in your introduction, everything that a person experiences has a direct effect on the either expression or the suppression of genes. And so that's where epigenetics comes in. We have all these switches, and the switches are either turned on or turned off by external forces. Number 5, prenatal and early postnatal stages determine to a very large extent our biological and psychological makeup. In other words, medical conditions in the immune system, reactions to stress, as well as personality and ability to relate and to love. 6, it follows, and this again is extremely important, it follows that the prenatal and early postnatal stages provide a unique and best opportunity for the primary prevention of biological and psychological disorders. 7, a secure relationship. So we are talking about bonding and attachment here. A secure relationship with one or two primary caregivers, preferably the parents of the child, maximizes the acquisition of emotional and cognitive skills. It is human connections which create the neural connections from which the mind emerges. This was said by Daniel Siegel, again, another extremely well-known scientist in the United States. Therefore, pregnancy is an opportunity for growth and transformation, not only for the child, but also for the mother. And finally, therefore, the mother is not just a passive receptacle or incubator for a child's growth, but rather an active initiator and participant. I think my 20 minutes are up and I shall stop there.
Doesn't work.
We're waiting for the sound.
We have sound now.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for your sharing this with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Mhm.
Are there any questions from the audience?
While eventually certain people are going to share a question on the chat, please use the chat to put your question. Could you talk to us about the mechanism of this unity between the mother and the baby? Do you have more info about the neuromédiators, the hormones, or the feedback, how it works? Does it work exactly like in the body, the mind act and create neuromédiators, and you have the answer like one unity?
There are many different systems by which the mother or you and I actually communicate. I mean, obviously there's language which we are using, but in terms of the mother unborn baby communication, there's the hormonal communication, which is very, very important. So that when, for example, the mother is under stress, she's producing stress hormones, which go directly into her blood system, from her blood system through the umbilical circulation into the blood system of the baby. So you have that very straightforward hormonal connection between the mother and the baby and the stress hormones. Also, when the mother is depressed or anxious, different hormones are being produced. And the mother is full of joy and happiness. There are happy hormones being produced. So all those things matter. But then there is also the connection between what I call behavioral communication. So, for example, when the mother puts her hands on her abdomen and, for example, pushes in during the last trimester on one side, then she pushes in on the other side. If the baby is awake, the baby will pick up that kind of communication and will push against the mother's hand. And so mother and child make this contact, which is beautiful and wonderful and loving. So that is behavioral communication in addition to the hormonal one. And finally, there is what I call sympathetic communication, which is that the mother's thoughts and feelings are being sent and transmitted to the baby. And this is like extrasensory perception, which we don't understand fully. And certainly there are a lot of scientists who will object to this as being unscientific, but I don't think that it is. Just because we can't explain it doesn't mean that it does not exist. And you know, we have all had experiences of this kind of sympathetic communication. Like I'm talking to you now, and if there was some person behind me who was looking at me, it is very likely that I would look back because I would pick up the fact that somebody is behind me looking at me. Or we have had examples of twins who may have been like hundreds of miles away from each other. And if one of them gets into trouble, gets into an accident, has a heart attack, anything like that, the other twin suddenly knows that there's something wrong with his brother, with his sibling. So I think these are the three ways, the hormonal, behavioral, and sympathetic, in which mother and unborn child communicate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have a question from Marcy Axness. What has changed most, do you think, either in our knowledge or our cultural approaches since your first book, Secret Life of the Unborn Child?
Well, hello, Marcy. It's so good to see you again. It's been ages. Thank you for your question. I think what has changed is that, you know, when I started writing about this and talking about this, there was tremendous resistance and hostility from particularly the medical establishment. That has kind of disappeared. Nowadays, it's almost accepted. It is not something that is extraordinary. It has become part of the belief system in medicine, in psychology. It's almost as if I missed those early interactions and hostilities from people, because now I just go and I talk about this and people accept it. So I will have to come up with something new that will be more controversial.
Thank you.
And I have in my last book, The Embodied Mind.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, you have another person that you absolutely don't know, called Laura Uplinger, who have a question about epigenetics. What's up with epigenetics? And it will be our last question.
Okay. What's the question again, please?
What is the new things that came since you wrote your book about epigenetics? Have we got some evolutions?
Well, you know, there are new developments all the time in epigenetics. I'm not, you know, I'm not a geneticist. I'm a psychiatrist who is just interested in genetics because of its effect that it has on all of us all the time, and particularly in terms of the genetics of children, but also the transmission, the transgenerational transmission of trauma that I'm very interested in. So that is an area where a lot of research is being done, particularly now that we have so many hostilities going on in the world, you know, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or, you know, any of the other places where there are hostilities. Children are suffering incredibly. Pregnant women who are pregnant are being affected by all these hostilities. So the transgenerational transmission of trauma is very much of interest to me and to epigenetics. And I think we will hear more and more about that as time progresses. But I think that we should have now time for the other panelists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Thomas Verny, it's amazing to have you, and an honor that you bless our event with your presence and all the other person that have said yes to our proposal and this initiative. So thank you for the bottom of our heart.
Thank you,
And
Francois. Thank you.
thank you so
Thanks.
much.